3, 2, 1, and we're back. We are going to be presenting something to you that we have been working on and off for about 90 days.
That's right.
Okay, and what this is this is in response to some questions that we've sort of generalized into this content with regards to wealth building. And there's a lot of folks out there that get into real estate, frankly, that start businesses, that want to have a plan so that eventually they can essentially be rich. And rich is, by our definition, where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. But it's confusing. And there's a lot of, there's frankly a lot of obstacles in the way to building passive income. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you about the different phases. And how many phases did we come up with? 5, I think?
I think
One,
there's
two,
5.
3.
Maybe there's 4.
There's 5.
There's 5.
Yeah. So we're going to talk to you about the 5 phases of wealth building. And this is going to be something, we presented something like this when we were in Hawaii doing a live event. This was a while ago. And the feedback we got after we presented this material was really overwhelming, to the extent where people were sending us emails and whatnot a year after having heard us present this and were thanking us because it gave them a sense of direction. So here's ultimately what I want to start out by explaining to all of you. And this is going to be something that if you take this offensively, or if you don't, if for some reason this rubs you the wrong way what I'm about to say, I want to apologize ahead of time, and I want to ask you to kind of consider what I'm saying and so that you can benefit from it, opposed to just being a little bit, I think, put off by it. And here's what it is. And this, like I said, some people will be offended by this, but it is what it is. Your real estate business has no value. When Julie and I sold real estate, our real estate business had no value. You're not going to sell your real estate business. Your real estate practice of you selling real estate, you could have a big team, even if you have a decent-sized brokerages. Decent-sized brokerages don't even sell for anything. So your business itself has no real value. And I'm not saying that to insult you. I'm just saying it because it's based on facts. How many people do you know who have successfully sold their real estate team? There's stories of them being sold, but it's not like, okay, here's a big-ass check. They're essentially that you'll get a trailing amount of the referral of the referral fees.
That's different than selling for some kind of big multiple, right?
Exactly. So there's no liquidity event in your future. So if you ever want to create financial abundance, if not financial security, you're going to have to do it yourself. And so here's really where the rubber meets the road. Your real estate business, the product of your real estate business, what you're supposed to be producing is happy clients, is essentially successful real estate transactions, all the things. But really, what your ultimate result should be is profit. So if your real estate business, and if your anything business isn't producing profit, you're running literally a non-profit business. But what's the point of even running the business? You are a sole practitioner. You are running a small business. You probably have 50 or fewer people working for you. You probably are, essentially still doing most of the most important heavy lifting in your business yourself. Right? All these things are true. So the moral of the story is, if you're not pulling enough profit out of that business, you're never going to be able to break free of the monotony of the effort, and you're never going to be rich where your money works for you and no longer work for your money. Now, why is profit so important? Well, obviously, you have personal bills to pay. But the reason the profit is important is because it's with that profit that you reinvest that money into things that will create passive income for you. So I want you to think about that. Think about all the things I just said. So if you're building your business because you think that someday you're going to be able to sell it, find me examples where real estate businesses have sold. There are a few, but they don't sell for very much. And then once you realize what I just said is true, then you're going to say, if you still want to have some resemblance of financial freedom, hopefully sooner than later, how are you going to do it? Well, you maybe want to buy multifamilies, you're going to buy stock security, things like that. We're going to talk about all that in the next few days. But the moral of the story is you can't do any of it unless you're running a profitable real estate business. So your product of your real estate business is profit. And again, if that rubs you the wrong way, I want you to understand my intent. My intent is to make it so that you can be financially free, where your money's working for you and you no longer have to work for your money. Because even if the day is not today, I promise you there will be a day when you are essentially thinking to yourself, why the hell haven't I built enough financial freedom for myself that I still have to worry about the same things I worried about 20 years ago?
That's right, and that's how it's going to take more than 20 minutes to explain how to get there. But we're going to do that for you over this 2-part series, and that's what you were just talking about, is what you and I call escape velocity, right? Which is building the foundation for your financial freedom. And financial freedom is the dream of every ambitious real estate agent, a life where your passive income exceeds your expenses, freeing you from the daily grind. This two-part series is going to outline that roadmap to achieving that freedom, starting with the foundational steps to build that lasting wealth. And this is why Tim took a second to make sure that we had clarified your first understanding. We often start with a mindset point, right? What is your product? It's profit. So just digest that for a second, and then we'll get to number one, the ground phase, foundation of your success.
So again, I want to make it really clear. And first of all, we did this in kind of a fun way. Well, at least we thought it was fun, where we're trying to make it so that you can. The analogy is a plane, or not a plane, but a jet. Oh my gosh, a rocket ship getting ready to take off. We're sort of motivated by Elon Musk's, SpaceX. So that's the vision. Try to have that in your head, right? So as we go through these different phases. And again, this is wealth building, but wealth building is commensurate. The amount of wealth you can build is commensurate, equal to, obviously, the amount of money you make. But what's more important than that, you might be surprised to know, or I'll say equally as important, is the amount of money you spend. So if you're spending too much money, even if you earn a lot of money, you're not going to have enough profit left over to actually invest in things that will make you money passively. And don't think it takes, now the average millionaire, and this isn't in these notes, Julie, but I did research this for another podcast I worked on with you yesterday.
Sure.
The average millionaire doesn't become a millionaire until they're in their 50s, okay? And the average millionaire has a net worth of $1 million or more from the equity in their home.
Of course.
Now the moral of the story is it takes time. It takes time to build wealth.
Yep.
It takes, so if you're in your 50s, you're right on time.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're in your 60s, guess what? You're right on time. 70s, well, a little late, but you can still do it. But if you're in your 20s and you're being discouraged because you spend too much time on Instagram and you think you should have your own private jet by now, that is not the reality that essentially is enjoyed by most people. So give yourself patience and give yourself grace and realize that, frankly, when you follow this plan is designed to spark interest in you building your own financial wealth building roadmap. But we're going to give you the core elements right now. Julie?
Okay, so think about that rocket ship. That's what you're headed for, is escape velocity. But first, you have to spend time on the ground, don't you? That's the ground phase. That's your foundation of success. It's preparation. It's learning. The journey to financial freedom begins with a strong foundation. So this phase is all about learning, developing disciplined habits, and setting up systems for success. It's a lot of what we teach you in Premier Coaching. And we've got four bullet points that go under this ground foundation. The first one is mastering your real estate fundamentals. That's prospecting, lead generation, and client services, the building blocks of consistent income, things like your script, your skills, so that you can stand out in your market. The next bullet point is to create an actual financial plan. Even if you just got licensed yesterday, your job is to create a plan as early in your career as possible. So budget your expenses and save 20 to 30% of every commission check. An emergency fund covering 3 to 6 months of expenses is a must to navigate any unpredictable income, especially as you're getting started on the ground floor here.
Let me drop in. If you guys want these notes, you're hearing her literally say bullet point because she's reading the notes that we wrote. If you want these notes, which you will, definitely jump into our free, I was going to say subscription, but it's not really, our free newsletter. Just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and drop your email address, and then you'll start getting all that day's notes from the podcast, as well as access to the past notes. We used to be able to make our notes available in iTunes and Stitcher, Spotify, but we can't anymore. So now if you want our notes from our podcast, you have to become a subscriber to harrisrealestatedaily.com. And guess what? It costs nothing. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com, drop your email address in, and remember, you then are going to have to go over to your normal email, and you're going to have to confirm that you want the subscription because the system requires that you double opt in, and then you'll start getting the newsletter every single day. And then you can use our notes, and we oftentimes will include links, book suggestions, other things that we don't cover on the podcast. So that's really important. But the point of these, and if you are listening to what we're saying here, your goal is to create escape velocity. So this happens in phases. The first one's ground phase. That's clearly where you're on the ground and you're getting ready to get started. The next phase is called ignition. The third phase is called escape velocity. Now, the ultimate phase is called orbital stability. So I want you to visualize, going back to the rocket analogy, that when most of the effort, most of the energy is spent, is when the rocket is trying to leave the Earth's gravitational pull. And the gravitational pull that you're experiencing is lack of knowledge, maybe some ego, preconceived notions you have about about wealth, maybe all these things. So the best way to move past the things that are holding you to the earth is just put a plan in place and then follow the plan. Don't overanalyze, why you think the way you think. There's so many books written about the psychology of wealth building, and if you want to read those books, and if that's going to be helpful for you, then go for it. But the reality of it is nothing's ever going to replace good old-fashioned action. And one of the best ways for you to do that is by completing a real estate treasure map, and that is free for you. It's our fill-in-the-blank business and real estate plan. It is included in the first level of Premier Coaching, and you can join Premier Coaching right now for free. Just go to premiercoaching.com. And again, you will have access to 30 days worth of coaching calls with one of our Harris certified coaches. So just go to premiercoaching.com and you get access to all of the first level of Premier Coaching. And my suggestion to you is all of you download the Real Estate Treasure Map, which is our fill-in-the-blank business and life plan. And it will take you through a lot of these fundamentals that we're talking about now and help you create your own financial plan so you can get to the point where you have long-term stability.
Yes, the Real Estate Treasure Map is definitely part of the ground phase, part of your foundation for success. That was the last point we said, create an actual financial plan. The Treasure Map will get you to do that. You can also start building equity when you're on the ground here. Buying a primary residence can be a powerful early wealth building tool. Real estate equity often accounts for 25 to 50% of a millionaire's early net worth, providing stability and growth. If you already have your primary residence, of course, you can invest in rental property and continue to build equity that way.
But Julie, this is also interesting. So most single-digit millionaires are millionaires because of their primary residence.
That's right.
And then those with net worths of $5 million, it was something like, on average, half of their net worth was in their primary residence.
Yes.
And it wasn't until they got to be decamillionaires or 10 million or above where the primary residence value became less of a, it was like 10% or 50%.
As they become diversified with their investments.
Exactly,
right?
as they
Makes
had more
sense.
money. But the key here is, hey, guess what? Buy a house.
Exactly. Also in your wheelhouse. Okay, so the next part is to leverage compounding interest. Even small investments in retirement accounts or index funds can grow exponentially over time. The earlier you start, the bigger the rewards are. Remember, Warren Buffett said that compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world. So the earlier you get started, the happier you're going to be about that.
A lot of people don't know what compounding interest is, and it's because it seems so bizarre to try to explain. But I'm not going to, I'll give you guys
We did a podcast on that.
We did, of course. What have we not done a podcast on at this point?
It's true.
So go to YouTube, and I want you guys to, it doesn't matter, there's so many great videos about this, and I've been showing Zoe, our 11-year-old almost, these videos so she can understand compounding interest. But go to YouTube and watch some videos on compounding interest. Khan Academy has some great content about that, and some other really great.
PragerU does it too.
Yeah, exactly. Because really, what compounding interest is, essentially, it's a wealth building accelerator, and it's compounding interest itself. Once you conceptually understand it, it will change your life. Because if you put in, for example, you guys have probably heard this before, or maybe if you didn't, I'll tell you now. If you put in, say, for example, $10,000 into the S&P 500, and within probably, if it's averaging what it has for the last 20 years, that 100,000 or 10,000 rather will become 20,000 usually within 7 or 8 years. Then that 20,000 will become 40,000 7 or 8 years from then. You guys get it? So what happens is the money's doubling every 7 or 8 years. But if the S&P 500 acts in the same manner that it has for the past few years, your compounding is going to happen about every 5 years. So that 10,000 is going to double every 5 years, not every 7 or 8. So that's the thing.
Only if you do it, though.
Well, exactly. Only if you do it. So some people will say, and I hear this all the time, I'm going to invest in my business. I'm putting all my money back in my business. Your business is to create essentially an ATM machine that throws off lots of net profit so that you can then invest that net profit into things like what we just told you. So you should look, when you say you're investing in your business, what are you really putting your money into? Because when you build a really well-honed real estate practice, there's not a lot of reinvesting that's necessary if it's a skills-based, proactive, lead generation-based business. If by investing in your business you mean you're spending a lot of money in marketing and advertising, that's spending. That's not investing. You're confused. So maybe you consider not being confused and think about how you want your life to be in 5 years, let alone 10, and how much better you'd feel if you're a single digit, if not a $5 million net worth person or $10 million net worth person, because it'll get to the point where you will have more money that's coming from your appreciation of your assets. You'll make more money from that every year than you do from your actual earned income. So if you have, for example, $3 million, which all of you should be able to accumulate, you have $3 million in the S&P 500, that's going to throw off an average, are you ready, dear listener? $240,000 a year.
Passively.
Passively. You can choose to live off that 200. Now, okay, maybe you only, you have $1 million saved. That's fine. $1 million in the stock market. Maybe it takes you 2 or 3 years or 4 years to do it. 5 years, 10 years, doesn't matter. That $1 million is going to throw off $60,000 to $80,000 per year in passive income. A lot of you could live off of that.
No, that's right, especially if you do the rest of the plan and you're watching your expenses and things like that. One of my coaching clients, Jeannie Adenolfi in Phoenix, this is something that she's working on with her, I think her daughter might have just turned 16, 17, who now has just gotten a job, okay, her first job, she's working at Target. They are working on some investment goals at that age to take even 10% of her paycheck because Jeannie told me they're going to go to ChatGPT and they're going to do what you just did and say, okay, if we put in this much, and it's 5 years from now and she did it every single month off of every check, what is that going to be worth to her?
Yep.
And because especially when you're that age, and I know we have a lot of younger listeners as well, it's kind of abstract if you don't say ask ChatGPT, and there's a lot of different investment tools that you can find online, to show you that chart, show you that graph, show you how that money is actually going to grow exponentially. And you don't have to, I think a lot of people think if I'm not putting in $1 million to start, it's never going to be a hill of beans. That's not true. You've got to do it consistently, even if you're just starting with $100 a week because of the compounding interest.
And what to invest in? It's very simple. You guys should write this down. Again, do all this homework yourself. Julie and I are not financial planners, but where we have invested for a long time is into Vanguard index funds. And we've been investing into an S&P 500 index fund called VOO, Victor Oxygen Oxygen. But it's not necessarily the best one, so you guys got to do your homework. Why do we invest in Vanguard index funds? Because what they charge per year is basically nothing. So what the problem a lot of agents have, a lot of people have, and they don't even know it, is they're spending thousands of dollars and potentially millions of dollars over a lifetime with their wealth advisor. I've got someone that manages my money for me. Okay, what are you paying them? Well, I pay them 2% per year. So how much money do you have saved? I have $1 million. So you're paying them $20,000 a year to do what you could do yourself. Yes, but I don't have to think about it. Well, okay, so if you had left that $20,000 that you paid them into your index fund, you realize how much that $20,000 that you've been paying in fees every year for the last 2 years or last 10 years would actually be worth, if you factor in compounding interest, like another $1 million or something crazy. Not like that, probably more like 300,000. But you guys get the point. So you've got to be ultimately, and this is something that we found out the hard way over time, when you hire wealth advisors or accountants and all that, you should take what they're saying with a grain of salt because all of them are going to have their own biases. Maybe it's because they want to sell you something, or maybe it's just because their education ended at what they're selling or what they're trying to explain to you. You cannot make the assumption whenever you're getting professional advice from anybody that should be the end-all be-all of your information gathering phase, especially when it comes to money. So one of the first rules that Julie and I always look for when we're taking financial advice from anybody is, are they significantly richer than we are? I know that sounds pretty basic, maybe a little harsh, but I don't want to listen to anybody that's not significantly richer than we are.
Well, it's the same reason you don't hire a trainer that's eating McDonald's while they bark at you what to exercise.
Or it's the same reason you don't hire a real estate coach that never sold real estate before.
That too. That's
I mean, all these dumb things, right? So go with the obvious thing. Okay, if you're going to take advice from someone who's in your net worth to say $500,000, I'll suggest you not listen to anyone unless they have a net worth of like 10 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And make them prove it.
Yes.
And then listen to what they're saying, write it down, and then go do your own homework. Because I'm going to tell you where you're going to end up. This is the research that you will end up having to discover or having discovered, is you're going to end up investing in probably 3 to 5 index funds from Vanguard. And you're going to end up basically investing in those funds every single month laboriously. You're going to take, as Julie said in the first point, 20 to 30% off every check, and you're going to invest in index funds. And you're going to do it, and you're not going to think about it. It doesn't matter if the stock's up, the stock's down, doesn't matter what's going on in anything. You're just going to continue to invest. That is the essence of what it takes to be a successful investor. And all these people that want to get you to day trade or invest in risky things, unless you have money to lose, which none of you do, then you should remember what I just told you and just do the boring stuff. Now, what I just told you is not going to be anything that people are going to brag about at Starbucks. Oh, I just invested in XYZ, AI, whatever. No, you're going to say, I just invest in the S&P 500, and people are going to go like, boring.
Yeah, but that's okay.
But that's okay. You want the slow and boring method of building wealth is definitely the thing that's going to get you there most consistently. You can take some risks now and then, but you got to make sure that you remember what I just suggested to you. Be your own best wealth advisor, and you guys should write this down too. Bogleheads, B-O-G-L-E-L, I think?
B-O-G-L-E.
Yeah, it's L-E. B-O-G-L-E, heads, H-E-A-D-S. Just Google that. And then there's one really good, I think it's a Reddit, something like that, where you can go and learn from essentially this very basic investing advice I just gave you. But John Bogle is the one that started Vanguard. And so these guys are the people that are obviously rabid enthusiasts of what they've learned from him and the index fund industry that he basically created that's made a lot of people incredibly wealthy, financially free. You can do the same thing. What I'm trying to encourage you to do here is realize that building wealth is not something that's super complicated and that you need a room full of nerds to help you figure out.
No, if you can read, you can learn this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe you can't even read that well. You can
Listen to it.
You can at least copy what other people have done that are already where you want to be.
Yep, that's right. So that was all very foundational on the ground floor before you start to ignite your business. So part 2 is ignition, launching your business, building momentum with a strong foundation in place. Things like the real estate treasure map, things like your skills, your scripts, the basic stuff. The next phase focuses on generating consistent income and reinvesting in growth. This is where a lot of our coaching clients are. So create a reliable income stream. I know most of you know how to list and help a buyer get into contract, but what about month in and month out, meeting or exceeding your specific monthly goals? Create a reliable income stream using proven strategies, scripts, systems to build a steady pipeline of buyers and sellers. Consistency is key because remember, your goal is to invest, not just to pay your bills. And that leads to investing in yourself through coaching, mentorship, certifications like ethical real estate professional. These all refine your skills and elevate your business and get you to be more and more consistent. Then your job, because you're becoming consistent and you start, knowing that you can create that regular income month in and month out, now it's time to acquire income generating assets.
Now I'm going to stop you there, and I know I wrote this part, but I do want to make this a cautionary tale. Now, when Julia's about to talk about rental properties are great, but I have to say, in this marketplace, unless you're going to be paying cash, even then, we'll just do a quick financial analysis for you guys. So Julie and I have dozens of rental properties, and we've been married for 33 years, and we've been buying for, guess what, 32 years or something like that?
Yep.
And we bought a lot of the houses that there were our listings when we sold real estate. So rental properties nowadays are very, very difficult to pen out unless you're paying cash.
Yeah, because they've gotten really expensive.
And the interest rates are too high.
Interest rates are high. The taxes have gone up right with the property value.
So you're going to have to end up buying in markets that are probably not familiar to you.
For most of them, yeah.
Which we don't have a problem doing because Julie and I will still do that. So you're going to end up buying maybe in places like Tennessee. You're going to end up buying in places like Kentucky. You're going to end up buying in places like North Carolina and other areas like that where you have no context. You're going to have to. It's not difficult to get at least some market knowledge. And then find, you can go on, if you're a premier coaching client, just ask for somebody that specializes in those particular markets. And then even then qualify them at the highest level. And then do your own homework, maybe fly there, have it, check it out. Julie and I will buy rental properties. We have rental properties we bought that we've never seen before because we trusted the agent. They were a coaching client.
That's right.
And they worked out really brilliantly for us. But when it comes to rental properties, like if you buy a property for, say, $300,000, which you can buy for in some of these off markets, I think, maybe even $250,000.
Yeah, I would say probably 180 is kind of your,
Where can you buy a good rental for 180?
Paducah, Kentucky would be a place.
There you go.
Alton, Illinois.
Okay, who's Paducah, Kentucky? Who should they call?
Sarah Gibson.
Sarah Gibson. Okay. That's right. We looked at some rentals that she had, and they were really great. Yeah.
I mean, we bought one from Brandon Jackson, one of our coaches in Charlotte.
Yep.
That was a good one.
Well, so let's use Paducah, Kentucky. So if you bought one for 180, and let's say you put down a mortgage or put down half, and let's say you have a $100,000 mortgage.
Right.
You're probably going to have, with taxes and carrying costs, you might rent that out. Sarah maybe can chime in here, but you're probably going to rent that out for $1,500, $1,600 a month. So if your carrying costs at 7%, let's say what your mortgage rate is,
Yeah.
and your taxes. So let's say it costs to carry that mortgage. Let's say it costs you $800.
Yep.
She'll make $800 a month off that.
Yeah, and in markets like that, the property taxes are
Yeah.
not horrific either.
Right. So you'll need a lot of those at that point. Now here's where it gets confusing. If you had taken that same, let's say half down, say $80,000 or $90,000, and you had stuck that money into the S&P 500, and you use the last 20 years as an example, and that money in say 5 years, or let's say 7 years, has now doubled in value, you need to go back to the rental property. So if that rental property where you've been making, let's say $800 a month positive cash flow, and you've got, so that's $9,600 a year, so that's $10,000 a year in cash flow. But then, that's net, let's say, adjust accordingly. But then that property is appreciated. Let's say it only appreciates to keep up with inflation of 3% per year. So over the next 10 years, that $180,000 property, it won't double at 3%, but it might be worth like $230,000, right?
Yeah,
but you're going to have some vacancies, you're going to have some maintenance, you're going to have some upkeep. Then you need to write all of it down, and you need to compare actually what makes the most sense. And here's what you'll discover. Is in a lot of cases, it actually is, because of interest rates, going to make more sense for you to put the money in the S&P 500. Now, what you aren't going to get with S&P 500 is you aren't going to get depreciation. So you buy rental properties because you get appreciation of the asset, hopefully you get cash flow, and then you get depreciation. And depreciation is, research that too, watch videos on YouTube, but the gist of it is, even, accelerated depreciating, something will save you a whole bunch of money on taxes. But even just normal depreciation will save you money on taxes. But if you're paying too much money in taxes, the old answer is, and it's probably still true, is you just need to buy more rental properties, and then eventually the depreciation will offset the taxes, but you have to buy a lot. But this is how you have to think. And if it's too complicated, if you're not in a market where you can even make the math even remotely work, and you have to buy in Paducah, Kentucky, and you don't know anyone, maybe you know Sarah, you guys getting my point here? And that's uncomfortable for you. Invest in the S&P 500.
That's right.
You'll get cash flow if it's a dividend-paying stock, which, again, you can research yourself. You'll get appreciation of the asset. The stock will go up in value, right? But you won't get depreciation. So, again, factor all this into your long-term plans. But I'll tell you what the real answer is. And this is what we tell our coaching clients. You want to keep selling real estate. You want to buy rental properties. Then you want to take the profit from the rental properties, and you want to use that profit to invest in the stock market. That's what we have all of our coaching clients do.
But that brings us back to the whole point of launching your business. It starts with honing in, being able to do this very consistently, because what you talked about was not just doing it once, doing it consistently.
Right.
Because just having one rental that gives you $9,600 a year probably isn't going to get you to your financial goals. You need to be able to do that consistently.
Most of them need fewer. If you did the math on this, Julie, if you bought, like, say, over the next 5 years, if you buy a rental property per year, like what Julie and I used to do, we always tried to keep ourselves in contracts on a rental property, because that kept us so we were always broke because we were saving for the down payment. But it also, our whole vision when we got into real estate was to be financially free, where one day our money worked for us and we no longer worked for our money. At that time, it was basically just living off the cash flow of our rental properties. We've gotten more financially sophisticated as we've gotten older and created other income streams, and we're hopefully opening your mind to some of these things as well. But the moral of the story is we accomplished that before we were 40. And then we, didn't need the money because our other businesses were doing really well. So we really started pouring all that cash flow from the rental properties into the stock market. And that's the same thing you guys should do. So ultimately what you want is you want to make sure your business stays profitable, to Julie's point. From that profit, you want to buy rental properties. And from the rental property profit, you then want to invest that money into dividend-paying stocks. Maybe you take the dividends and maybe you don't. What's a dividend? A dividend is when you buy a share of in a company, and then the company will then pay you on top of the appreciation of the stock. They'll actually give you money every month, sometimes every quarter, maybe once a year. Essentially, they'll give you a tiny portion of the profit from the company in the form of a dividend. That's you being an investor. That's you owning literally part of that company. So you guys get it? So when you get a dividend-paying stock, you shouldn't take the dividend out. You should leave that dividend in the stock to buy more equity in that company. But this is this will make it so your real estate business has a real true purpose. It's to produce a profit. With that profit, you buy rental properties. With the rental properties, you buy dividend-paying stocks, and that creates what's it called, a gratuitous, you know what I'm saying? where essentially everything keeps on building wealth.
It's a cycle, yeah.
A cycle. And then you're going to look on your Monarch, which we suggest you guys use Monarch. I think it's Monarch Money.
MonarchMoney.com.
Yeah, MonarchMoney.com. And you're going to look on your MonarchMoney.com, and you're going to see your stock market portfolio, increasing in value, your real estate value increasing in value. You're going to see all these things happening simultaneously, and you have all these things that are creating wealth for you that are making you into a multi-millionaire that are going to start compounding. And just like a rocket taking off, back to our point, when the rocket's trying to leave the launching pad, it's using most of the fuel. And you guys can visualize this. Some of you in Florida, you've seen this before where these rockets are taking off. It looks like they're moving so slowly and using all this energy to try to break free of the Earth's gravity. You're the exact same way. And so you've got to give yourself some patience to the point where you start building more acceleration, because then eventually, once you're past ignition, then you can actually move towards the next phase, and the next phase is what we'll talk about tomorrow.
That's right. Well said.
So what should their homework be from today?
It's a lot to digest. First, get the notes.
Yeah.
Make sure you got the treasure map, because that is very foundational in laying out how to execute on the things that we laid out for them. So I think that that's good. And of course, join Premier Coaching.
I'm going to give them this too.
Sure.
One of the key fundamentals to becoming financially free is to maintain a low or lowish personal burn rate.
Absolutely.
Because if there's one thing that's going to screw up your potential to build long-term wealth, is I think unchecked personal spending, and that's where we see people
lifestyle creep types of stuff.
And it happens constantly.
Yeah.
It's easy to do.
It is easy to do, but remember, if you're spending, so the first stage is to figure out how to predictably buy and sell real estate with your clients, right?
Yep.
Predictably, with skill, so that you can lather, rinse, repeat. It's predictable, it's duplicatable. So once you figure that out, then the sky's the limit for how much you can build that up. But if you're spending everything that you're making because you have lifestyle creep, then you have defeated the purpose of making the profit in the first place, which was the ability to invest it and get to that more passive income.
So here's the bonkers thing.
Yeah.
The thing is that when you're like, I'm not saying don't go on vacation and have some, enjoy your money and all the rest of it. But if you really want to have a high level of motivation, and some of you are experiencing this, so you know what I'm talking about. When you log into your Monarch Money and you realize that you're now essentially building wealth from passive sources that you don't have to directly do, that gives you more motivation to go after it in terms of real estate.
Because you see it's working.
You see it's working.
Yeah.
You're actually more motivated the wealthier you become, not less motivated. When you see your stock market portfolio go from thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions, then guess what? Tens of millions. And the same thing happens to your real estate values. When you see all this happening, you become more motivated, more excited, and you sell more houses because you start setting financial goals, and you now are realizing you're flying first class business Emirates to Dubai to watch the last Formula One race of the season or whatever the hell it is, and you don't even care about the money you're spending. But it only has happened because you've earned the right to be financially free, where your money works for you, no longer work for your money. And I have to say, coming from the background of a poor kid, the hardest part is accepting, not just mentally, but emotionally, accepting the concept of being financially free. And that's something that's weird, because my entire existence and everyone I knew was working for a living forever. Nobody actually ever retired,
Yeah, just working to pay the bills.
Exactly. And that was the existence that so many of us have been, born into. So we don't have enough personal examples of people that have essentially created enough escape velocity where they essentially have money working for them and they no longer have to work for their money. And we're going to tell you guys about the next 2 phases or 3 phases on the show tomorrow. I know you love this podcast. You're keeping this the #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate agents in at least the United States. I strongly encourage you to subscribe to the newsletter if you've not yet done it yet. All of our notes are in there, harrisrealestatedaily.com. In the meantime, have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.